I figured that before I take this off to be stored, I should do a video on it, because it'll probably be months before I take any of my other vacs out of storage. This is a Silver King Blue Max. The Air 2000 here was the last model to be produced by Silver King before they went out of business. And as we can see, it's quite the power hog, using about 1.2 more amps than your standard canister, or standard vacuum, I should say. It's got a few dents here. I tried to kind of hammer those back out, and I had to paint the inside of this. It was pretty rough when it came to me, and the paint was flaking away from the bottom of here. I'm gonna guess somebody picked up a bunch of water with it and just left it. So at the suggestion of a friend and fellow collector, I picked up some of this, what was it? It was like Rust-Oleum appliance epoxy paint, and I figured the black would look better than the white. And I got some, they still make filters for these. I think it was Glenn's vacuum filters, which I'll double check where I got these from, because these are pretty much identical from what I remember to the originals. I did kind of jerry-rig a filter so I could at least try this out by cutting a piece of a HEPA bag. I know a lot of the earlier Silver Kings just used a paper filter, and they were known to clog up very quickly. But in my experience with my previous Blue Max, I find that these polypropylene ones, despite their small surface area, really aren't too bad for airflow retention. So, just has a flat filter across the top, that goes there, and then the motor unit goes on top of it, and then you have these little clamps to secure. Now, Silver King's not too well known name. You know, certainly not as well known as things like Rainbow or Filter Queen, but they were a door-to-door company. And they've been around, well, I should say they had been around for a good number of years. So, I just thought it might be somewhat interesting to do the video on this. And I should mention, too, that they had two different versions of hoses. They had the standard Plastiflex one, which was included with their deluxe kit. And they had to have an adapter for these because these tools were actually made to fit inside the other hose. And unfortunately, I'm missing the adapter for it, so I can't even use the tools. It's a little bit amusing to me, but I mean, they came with the crevice tool, your standard horsehair dusting brush, a very Kirby-like tool in this little grooming piece, or whatever you would call it. And then the floor tools. We had the floor brush, and we had a squeegee, because these were able to pick up water. But what I learned about them is they don't have a float valve, or at least the Blue Max series didn't. And when the company was still active, I called and asked about that, and they just told me, oh, you just use the standard filter. I don't really know if that keeps water out well, because I very rarely picked up water with my Blue Max. And then this is how the floor tools lock on to the wand. Just slides in there. From there, you're locked on until you put it back into the position to pull the notch out. So, we'll move on to the testing, but this is about to get very loud, because this machine uses a peripheral bypass motor in it, and bypass motors tend to be rather noisy. And I'm guessing it's because they don't really put any sound insulation. Well, there's no sound insulation at all in this thing. Well, I mean, unless you can count that. But I mean, you have the cleaning air coming out of here, and then you have the motor cooling air coming out of here. the motor cooling fan draws air in through this up here and then exhausts it through these vents. Very, very noisy. I've sometimes said using one of these is like having a central vacuum right behind you. An unmuffled central vacuum, I should say. All right, we're about to get loud. I suppose before I move on to the airflow testing and such, I should mention that I kind of doubt whether I got this back together quite right. Because I can't remember if how these three layers went. If this piece on top fit inside of here, and then it was this layer and this layer. I mean, I know this goes on top, but it's between these two layers. I'm not sure if I have them situated quite right. It sounds a little bit ridiculous, I'm sure, but I mean, this blue layer could either go underneath here and then, you know, be pushed through like I think I have it, or it could potentially sit on top of here, and I'm not really sure how it was supposed to go. So, just worth mentioning. Oh yes, and I don't have the original power head for it either. It would have originally come with the, well, in the setup with the deluxe hose, it would have come with the EBK 340, which I don't have, but I do have an EBK 360. So I'll be measuring it with the 360, but it isn't the correct head for it. And then the non-deluxe version of this came with a Douglas-style power head. And before I do the hose testing, it actually uses the same locking system as like an old TriStar or Compact. So you could actually use one of those hoses with it. Of course, the difference would be in this electrical plug. I know some of the older models, like my other Silver King, actually has a 3-prong setup versus the 2-prong, although I believe that this connector, yes, it does have the 3rd prong in it. So just plugs in right up there. And now on to the hose testing. Fairly long hose, I think about 8 feet. And with a Plastiflex grip on it, which is nice. Okay. That's pretty good. But still some leakage. I think these are better sealed though than the 340 since they don't appear to have that vent going from the brush hole cavity to the motor. And just out of curiosity, let's check on the wattage here. And now let's turn the brush roll on. Yep, we've exceeded 12 amps. Although not quite 13, I don't think. So, we'll just call it there. Yeah, it's like I do think like I said, I do think the EBK 360 is better sealed than the 340. Much better designed, and of course having a height adjustment on it's always helpful. Very aggressive head. Alright, so my usual little pickup test. So yeah, there we have the very last of the Silver Kings, the Blue Max Air 2000. It's kind of a shame that they're gone, but I mean, they are kind of behind the times. You know, the filtration system isn't great. It doesn't have any sort of post-motor HEPA filter. It's loud. I mean, there's things to like about it. It's definitely a nice, solid feeling design, and, you know, it feels very heavy duty. Which I suppose would be the same thing, but, yeah. Just kind of sad to lose a unique looking vac. But it is what it is.